I just started to record.
What?
I started to record, so you're on.
Okay. This is the first ACM event of the semester. ACM is this new club at Oakland University. It's a new chapter. ACM stands for Associated Computing Machinery. And it's a huge organization at like almost every college. And here, we're trying to make it sort of a space for computer science and IT students to sort of get to know one another and anyway.
We have a clubhouse. Is that the right word?
We do
I'm
have
gonna
a
advertise that.
Clubhouse.
It's a hangout space.
Of the EC. You can't miss it. It's got a huge ACM logo on it.
Room 557. You've
Yeah.
probably seen my picture on it, a bunch of the other guys' pictures on that door. If you're ever on the 5th floor, you guys are more than welcome to come hang out there. Just knock on the door if you ever see anybody in there.
Exactly. And, well, I think we should get started.
Okay.
Introductions.
Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Panel. Okay.
He just
Yeah, I was like, whoa, was that like a special effect? Okay. So what do you want us to do? Just like give a little intro about ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Dr. Zytko. I'm a professor in the computer science department. It's my second year here at the school. And when I was finishing my undergraduate degree some years ago, I was hopeless, really didn't have any job opportunities, and fell into a PhD by accident. It's kind of like my fallback plan because I didn't know how to get a job. And through that process, I learned a lot about how to get a job. And then I became a professor before I was 30. So there you go.
My name is Wojciech. I started my work as an electrician. So I didn't really start in the IT field, but then I decided to do more IT, so I got a job as a help desk person here. And then I moved up from a help desk to a sysadmin at the school too, just like a student worker. And then I went to career fair, I found some jobs, and I work as a DevOps engineer at Tyler Technologies now, full time. So.
All right. Well, my name is Marcel Jonas. Well, I'm going to be graduating this December. Yay! But anyway, I know it doesn't sound excited, but currently I work as a network intern for Champions Homes Inc. It's a interesting job. I enjoy it. Definitely working mostly on infrastructure IT problems. A lot of customer help. I'm now a published author thanks to Dr. Z and the team that was leading over the summer. Because of that, I actually went to Barcelona. I'm very thankful for that because school paid for it. And yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Hey guys, I'm Jason. Most of you guys pretty much know me, I think. I've had classes with most of you guys, but I'm also an IT major. I graduate this December as well. I am currently a Apple lead genius at the Apple Summer Store at Somerset Mall. And summer of 2016, I was a Google IT intern at their headquarters in Mountain View, California. So.
All right. We're going to start with a few moderator questions, and then we'll open up the floor for your own questions. First question. What are some common problems you see with new interviewees or students, or some problem you had yourself that you overcame?
Problems during the interview process.
Yes.
Students that are going up for interviews.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can you specify phone calls or just in person?
Yeah, phone calls work, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, whatever comes to mind. You want to?
I guess my problems at first, phone calls, like my first one was kind of a mess, but basically what happened is they called me and they asked me, do you have time? And I said yes at that time. Now, don't do that. Always reschedule it because first of all, it's on your turf. They're calling you, so reschedule it. So for example, if they call you on Tuesday, say, can you do Friday at this time? And make sure that you do your homework for them. Because if they call you out of the blue, first of all, that shouldn't be okay, but they do that sometimes.
All the time.
Yeah, they're trying to basically catch you off guard, and it's not good for you to take it off guard. There's a less likely chance for you to succeed.
So I kind of second that. Like, you know, I know a lot of students will just blow their resumes out to just anywhere that is accepting resumes. If it has anything to do with like IT or CS, they'll just blow their resumes out just to say, hey, I applied to this place. But at the same time, like you were saying, they'll get caught off guard and get a phone call, and then they'll have absolutely no idea who is calling them or what company they might be from, or just in general, they're just like, hey, I know that I have my resumes out there, but at any time they could have one of 10 companies calling them and have absolutely no idea who it is at all. So I've seen it before where I've had friends that they're like, yeah, I just got a phone call from a recruiter from, I have no idea what company it's from, but they set up an interview with me on this day. And I'm like, so if you are gonna apply somewhere, if you're gonna submit your resume to them, just at least keep a list, even in your notes on your phone or something, just hey, I've applied to this place, and it doesn't hurt to, especially when they first call you, just ask, who's you're speaking to. Most of the time they'll be like, hey, I'm so and so from so and so that way you have a good idea. Okay, this person called me back. You can check it off on your list and say, hey, I've got a call back from this person, or at this company. So.
You want to do anything, or should I?
I guess my tip, when I always went into interviews, I got really nervous and I didn't really know what to say, and how I am right now, I just don't really know things to say. I just start talking and hopefully something comes out that's smart. So I guess my tip is just don't get nervous. There'll be plenty of opportunities so that's my tip.
Oh my God, that's a good segue into me, because I got super nervous too. I was notoriously bad as an undergrad, where they would ask me a simple question tell me about yourself, and 3 or 4 minutes later I'm still rambling with a lot of and my answers weren't concise at all. And so when I was finishing my PhD and going for professor positions, I decided the best way to get around that for phone interviews is to actually write down all of my answers, because you can kind of guess the typical questions they're going to ask. I'm sure when you guys have phone interviews, it's almost the same questions every time. Tell us about yourself. Why do you want to work here? And then if it's in the same kind of career space, those particular questions germane to that role. And so I had this Word document where I had I typed out and worked on my answers to every question. So there was no wasted words, no wasted space. And because it's a phone interview, they don't see what you're doing. So I would just have my computer up with that Word document, and phone interview after phone interview, I would get so good with even knowing where in my document the answer was to that particular question. So before they're done even asking it, I've already scrolled to that part, and I can literally just read word for word from my Word document. And to give you an example of that, when I was applying here to Oakland University, and I had my phone interview with them, I could tell they were all in a conference room. I could hear them on speaker, all of them there. First question they asked, why do you want to work at Oakland University? Scroll down, read the answer, which referenced multiple things they had in their website. The first thing they said was, Doug, you knocked it out of the park. And then it just makes it super easy from there, because they go, if you get one really good answer in, your credibility goes up super high. And then every answer after that, they're expecting this person's credible. We're expecting good answers out of them. So that's my recommendation. If you're not good with talking on the phone, or if you ramble a lot, just write up all your answers. Have a script for anything they could possibly ask before doing the phone interview.
Just a segue from what he said, make sure you do your homework. It pays to do your homework. It truly does. Basically, if you're applying for a certain position, there's requirements. Make sure you know those requirements. They're going to ask you similar questions. If you're doing the networking, they're going to ask you, what is the port number of HTTPS? They're going to ask you this question. And sometimes it will not be in a phone interview, but it will be at the interview. Just at my internship, they basically asked me a whole bunch of networking questions. SMTPS, what is it? And all of these other questions that I had to answer and had to kind of know. And the one thing that I didn't know until I found out later was you pretty much hit 90% of all the questions. Everybody before me didn't even hit 50. That's what sets you apart. You have the job description helps you prepare for it as well. There's countless of online sources. Plus, make sure you understand, let's say you're applying for United Shores, where they're hiring, by the way, but only full time. But they are big on their 6 pillars. Know the 6 pillars by heart if you apply there. That's just something, if in the phone interview, they will ask you about, or something about a character question that they will.
I was gonna say, at the same time, if they do ask you a question and you absolutely have no idea what it is, just flat out say you haven't had experience with it, or you just don't know. It's always better to say that you don't know, and you maybe I'd usually say something like, I've never had experience with this, but I'm always willing to learn, and if that is needed in the workplace. It's always better to say that than people I've heard of just try to make something up on the fly to make it sound like they know what the question is about, or they know the answer. like for instance, when I interned at Google, they would specifically ask me questions about software that was developed by internal Google, they would use internally. So like I would have no idea what that software was or what it was supposed to do unless I was a previous intern or I was a previous employee of Google. So I remember specifically for those, like when they asked me about that software, I specifically said, I have no idea what that is. I've never used it before, but I would always be willing to learn. And that's when they came back and said, well, there's no way you would have known what this is because this is one of our internal tools. So it was kind of like a trick question almost. Like, yeah, hey, he asked me about a piece of software that you shouldn't know about, but he was testing me to see if I would say, yeah, I've had experience with this before and blah, blah, when I should have never had it because I never worked for Google ever before. So.
Yeah.
Sneaky.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are pitfalls.
Yes. So
if you fall in a pit hole, most likely you're not going to call back. Just you know.
So yeah, if you don't know, if you honestly don't know, just straight up say, hey, I've never had experience with this before, but I'd love to learn. But don't ever try to beat around the bush and say, oh yeah, I've heard of this before, or like try to make something up on the fly because right then and there you just ruin your chances. So.
All right. Now, common interview questions, like strengths, weaknesses. How about yourself? How do you approach these to be successful? I suppose.
Well, you guys know my answer to this. It's just write them down, rehearse them relentlessly. Anything else?
Like, tell me about yourself. First, like, as far as when they want to ask you about, usually you reference a little bit of your history. You reference, hey, I heard about this company, this person contacted me. Use names. Especially if someone contacts you, use their name. And especially who you talk to and everything like that. Then you reference them and you're like, well, I'm interested and this job is interesting me because X, Y, and Z, depending on what the job is. For example, if you're going to be maintaining applications, well, I do like to code in Java, I do like to code in C#, I have some experience in that. Mention that in your, tell me about yourself. But also, it's based on how are you as a communicator and character. That's what they're kind of looking for as well. That's my input.
I was gonna say, if you get, so a lot of companies, especially like with Google, even Apple, like even Ally Financial now, but like the first interview that I went through was pretty much just behavioral questions. It was just, they wanted to see how you're, how you're human, just you interacting with other people, like how is it? Like, are you an okay person to talk to? Can you hold a conversation with somebody? I remember when I first started working for Apple 5 years ago, there was, in the 3 interviews I went through, there was absolutely no technical, like, interview at all. It was just pretty much all behavioral. Can I hold a conversation with somebody? Can I listen to somebody and be able to interpret what they're saying? Especially with Apple, and a lot of other companies, they don't really care to know what you know, but they're looking to see, hey, does this guy, does he have an interest in learning things? Does he have an interest in, our company? Is he a person that, can communicate well with others, work with others? They'll teach you whatever they want to teach you. I remember when I first got hired into Apple, the first 3 months I was there was just strictly classes. Like I was taking classes that I was getting paid for to take. It's pretty much like Apple school essentially. They'll teach you anything and everything they want to teach you to get you where you want to be in their company essentially. So I would just say behavioral, just strictly be open, be transparent with them. Just be yourself pretty much. Don't I know it's really hard not to get nervous and everything, but just be yourself. Honestly, just be yourself. So.
To add on to that, the interview starts the minute you shake that person's hand. Just that, flat out. If you're walking to the conference, that interview, the small talk that you're having with that person, that's where the interview started. It doesn't start in the conference room. It never does. Just as a heads up. So if you don't talk to that person the entire time, he will note that and say this person is non-communicative for some reason. And it always goes against you, and on the way back as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say instead of going to an interview and just they ask you a question, you answer it, try to approach it just like you're having a conversation with someone. Don't really just answer a question and then just be done. When I got my job, I really noticed that previous interviews, I just answered the question, I was done. But the one I got a job at, I really talked to the person. It was basically like I had a conversation with them, just talking back and forth when they asked me questions. And then if you ever get questions like the weaknesses one, that's a popular one. Definitely don't answer that with saying like you're a perfectionist. That's like the most common one.
Do not say that.
Don't say that. The best thing you could do is really say like a weakness. Like I would say that I hate public speaking. I get really nervous. So what I would say, I would bounce off that and say, I'm trying be better. I do events like this, public speaking, to build up my weaknesses. So.
Yeah. I mean, if I can just say one more thing, like, you're doing different things in each stage of the interview process. Like phone interview, it's a lot of like your skills, like Marcel's, examples of like specifically what port is whatever this is, But by the time you get to an in-person interview, especially like for bigger companies where usually it's like maybe a couple of rounds of phone interviews or like a phone interview, a Skype interview, and then something else, by the time they've actually brought you in, they know you could probably do the job. They're not going to waste their time with that otherwise, especially if you get to a level where, Jason, you might have had this. If you didn't, sorry. Where like companies will pay to fly you out to them for an interview. Have you gotten that?
I didn't get flown out. It was all through Google Hangouts, but yeah.
Yeah. So like when you go for like professor position, if you guys ever go to get a PhD, like the schools they fly you out, and when you get to that stage with any kind of company too, where they're putting resources into you. It's not about your expertise anymore. It's not about your qualifications. It's about, would we want this person to be our coworker? Is this a person we want to say hi to in the bathroom? Is this a person we want to get coffee with? So when you're going for those in-person interviews, they're really gauging the social compatibility. Is this something I would like to see around? And one way that I tried to get a good, vibe with them for that. So like Wojciech was saying how like really talk to them a little bit. I would have questions prepared that had nothing to do with qualifications for the job. It would be all about interest in them. I'd be like, what's your day like? What are you working on right now? And like if you can get them going, I'm getting them to talk about something they love, they're gonna remember the way that you made them feel. Oh, I really like talking with that person. And so like every person that you talk to at an in-person interview, they're all individually writing out an assessment for you afterwards. And they're gonna remember a lot about how you made them feel more than the specific answers that you gave them. So try to approach the in-person interviews more of like, my goal here is to make them think I'd be a good friend, a good person to see around every day, than so much an expert in whatever the role you're applying for.
So to bounce off that real quick, but I just recently accepted an offer with Ally Financial in their IT department, and their interview process was a little intense, but not too bad. But like what Dr. Z said, when you go into, so I remember my interview process was, it was first a phone interview, and then they invited me down to their Detroit office from 8 a.m. until noon. So I was there for 4 hours. I met with, so from like 8 o'clock, they set up a little presentation just like this. It was about maybe 15 people in the room. They had a presentation set up by, a couple people from their IT department. And then at 9 o'clock, they'd given you a schedule. So like you had a schedule that they had given to you, like a little, Ally folder and everything. And at 9 o'clock, from 9 to 9:45, you interviewed with so-and-so. From 10 to 10:45, you interviewed with so-and-so. From 11 to 11:45, you interviewed with so-and-so. But like it was different levels of the building, it was different people within the IT department, and then like the last person just had absolutely nothing to do with the IT department whatsoever, for me at least. The last guy I ended up interviewing with, we had such a great conversation that not only did we go over the allotted 45 minutes that we were allowed, but he ended up giving me a hug as I was walking out of his office because he enjoyed the conversation that much. He had physically told me like, thank you for the conversation that we had. I really, really enjoyed it. I really, really hope, that you're working with Ally soon. And then he literally gave me a hug. Like I was like, okay, like, it was a little weird, but I was like, wow, like this, like we were laughing, we were joking, like, it was just, we connected on such a weird level, I guess you would say, but it was a good weird. Like it was just like, I felt like I knew this guy like my entire life. So, but like you said, like if you can make a connection like that with any one of the people that you're face-to-face interviewing with, you're golden. So.
All right. Now, where did you find your interview opportunities? Like, how important are things like the career fair or things like that?
I'll yield to you guys. I think I'm a little different.
Okay, I'll just start this one off. For example, like recently, I had an interview with FCA, and the career opportunity where that happened is actually my resume ended up in front of the recruiters, and they contacted me. That's how I pretty much applied for the position they wanted me to apply for. Now, the interesting part was when I did my phone interview, the person who was representing the company was, misguided, to be honest, and she didn't do a good job on it. And so I actually got denied out of the blue because of it. But then later, like a week later, they called me at 8 a.m. They're like, we would like you to come in for an interview because the person who called you didn't know what the heck were they doing. And I was like, okay. So there's things that happen that you don't see in the background, and career fair was one of my ways in by basically making a good impressions with the recruiters there.
How did you make a good impression? Because like my experience with career fairs back when I was a student was just a giant, exhausting waste of time.
Okay, so good impression. You have to have like a hammer, basically. I call it a hammer because that's how I present it. So I have the resume, obviously. You have your resume, you tailor it to specific jobs, and you basically present them the resume, and then you go like, a lot of times you talk to them, you just talk to them like a normal human being, and then you just go down the resume and it's like, oh, in this work experience, I have this, and since I have the publication, I just took out the publication, like physical, and then gave them the publication. And the person went from just droning on, because I know you've seen that droning on, where they're just like, yeah, I'm accepting your answer, thank you, next guy. But the minute I gave him the publishing, his eyes were more like, wait, who are you? Like, he actually acknowledged me, because I could tell the conversation was going nowhere.
Was that because it was you're a published author, or was it more of I have something new to give you
That's something
you don't
new.
get this?
The 30
from
people
everybody?
before you, 30 people behind you are going to say similar things, and that's just what it is. What sets you apart? For example, let's say you have a website. Like Dr. Z always advertise, I have a website that I make people go to. Well, for example, have the website on your phone and give them the website, and they can scroll through and have their fun with it. Kind of the same concept. You give them something new. That's what it's like an advertisement. If an advertisement is bad, you're going to ignore it, but if the advertisement is like, okay, I actually want to see it, that's really what you're doing. And since we're all immune to advertisements, you have to make the ad something special. The same concept goes.
I was gonna say for my current job at Ally, I actually got that through the career fair, and to be honest, it was a total fluke. Like the whole thing was just I had gone to the career fair. My second interview with FCA was actually at the career fair. They asked me if I would mind doing it there, just because they were going to be on campus that day anyway, and it was convenient for them. And I was like, yeah, of course, no big deal. While I was at the career fair, I was like, you know what, I'm here. I might as well. I had a stack of resumes in my backpack, and I started passing out resumes. And I literally had no intentions whatsoever to go to the Ally booth. And then I was just kind of like, you know what, I'm here. I might as well just go talk to them, just to like get more experience with just talking to people in the field. So I went up and I spoke to the recruiter that was at the Ally table, and I didn't even have a resume in hand. I just simply went up to her and asked her like, hey, what is Ally all about? What are you guys looking for as far as, are you guys doing internships? Are you guys doing full time? What are you guys looking for as a company? And I just let her talk for a minute or two and just kind of tell me more about Ally and this and that. And then she was the one who opened up, and she was like, what's your story? Like what's up with you? And I was like, well, this December I'll be a graduate and with a bachelor's in IT. So I am looking for full-time opportunities, and then that's when she asked me if I had a resume on me. So like before I even told her like my work history or just anything at all, I was just simply I just went up to her and said, hey, I'm interested. What are you guys looking for? Just give me some information. Whether I was actually interested or not, I went up to her just asking for a little bit of information about the company and just what they're looking for. So just simple, like off that. So then as I handed her my resume, that's when I started talking about my past experiences and what I've done. And that's what led me to my first phone interview, and then the 3 interviews the week later, at their actual office. So it was probably the quickest interview process and quickest offer that I've ever had. When it was just me. I was literally looking at the booth too, and I was like, no, I shouldn't do this. And it was totally a fluke thing that I just went up there and spoke to her, and then 10 days later, I had a ridiculous offer waiting in my mailbox or my email. So, but just simply ask a simple question, just like, what are you looking for as far as full-time internships? What are you looking for at all? And then just let them talk for a second. So before you even get to what you're doing and what you are, or if you're a CS major, an IT major, whatever it is, just let them talk for just a minute to see what they're looking for, and then go from there. So
yeah, so one of my coworkers, they got hired in a couple months ago, and my boss, he went to the career fair here at Oakland, and the person they hired was actually at the career fair at Oakland, and that's where they met. And he got an offer there to work part-time until he finishes school, and then he's going to be full-time right after. And the main reason that he really stood out was because he worked on Node.js, so he's working that currently on his senior project, and we were looking for somebody that knew that. And he doesn't even know like the other languages that we use, But the fact that he knew that and he was working on that, that really made him stand out. So, and we're even willing to teach him the rest of all the languages because obviously if he knows this one, he's willing to learn more. So yeah, definitely make yourself stand out when you go to career fairs.
A lot of you mentioned the resume in that previous question. How important is a resume? And like, what belongs on it, what doesn't? How do you build a resume? A good resume.
Okay, you guys know I have opinions on this.
Yes.
So a couple tips. One, I think a lot of you have heard me say before, which is there's no such thing as a resume anymore. You should be creating or modifying your resume for each position that you apply to. If you're applying to Ally, Apple, Google, there should be an interview, or there should be a resume for Ally, Google, Facebook, whatever. You want to be tailoring your resume to match whatever they're looking for in that job call. So when they get it in front of them, they go, this person is custom made for us. They're mentioning all the terms we use, because a lot of these companies, they get so many resumes, they can't possibly have a human go through all of them. So a lot of them are just subjected to an algorithm where they're looking for particular keywords, and if you don't have them, you'll never even be seen by a human. So I really recommend you spend the time to modify your resume to mention as many key terms from that job call or job posting as you can. So even if you don't have the best qualifications compared to your competition, it looks like you're the best fit because you're just mentioning everything that they're mentioning. That's probably my number one recommendation for resumes.
To pick up back off of that, it's true. Like some people like I've talked to people like that where they just put jarble on their resume just because, and they got more calls back from doing that than they actually got from actually sending like a fully tailored that look, but it was a generic one. And that's something that's important. The more terminology you use in a resume, the likelier chance they will call you.
I was gonna say the big thing about that, like, so whatever you do put on your resume, like me for instance, when I went to the career fair, it was pretty much a generic one. But like with Google and Apple, when I was looking at the job description and tailoring my resume around their job description, like Dr. Z was saying. But if you're putting something on your resume, make sure you can back it up with like experiences and examples, because if they catch you off guard and you put something on there that you literally just took from the job description and you just threw it on there because you're like, oh hey, like I'm tailoring it towards them, and they ask you about it and you're not able to back it up, you've ruined your chances right then and there. Like just make sure that you have an experience or something to be able to relate to whatever you put on your resume. And that's for like every bullet or every section of your resume that you possibly have. You should be able to talk about your entire resume without even physically looking at it. Like that's the big thing. If you can't do that, or if you put something on your resume that you just did because it's tailoring your resume towards that job, and you can't back it up with an experience or an example or be able to talk about it, you've ruined your chances altogether. So just whatever you put on there, just make sure that you can back it up. So
most employers look for about 4 out of 10 requirements and then can you talk well, basically. Can you communicate with me like a human being? That's when you pretty much that's when you're gonna get the offers. They don't look 10 out of 10 because a lot of times, as at least my work even told me this, 10, if somebody is, if you even get 9 out of 10, usually that person is, well, not nice, or he's arrogant or things like that, that just be like, no, we don't want you because you don't fit the corporate lifestyle. And that matters to them a lot more than having full experience.
A lot of these recruiters too, they're not looking for people that have the 10 out of 10 on their resumes. They're not looking for that. They know what, when they make these job descriptions up, they know that they're not going to get somebody that's going to meet all the qualifications for it. They know that when they post these job descriptions. So, if you can hit on a couple of the things, it catches their eye, you're in. So, but if you have all 10 of them, and I've never had an experience where I had a recruiter tell me like, hey, you hit every single point of the job description on your resume. That's why we reached out to you. I've never had that. So they know when they put these job descriptions out there, they're not going to get, anybody that they're going to look at that has every single bulletin that they posted in the job description. So on their resume.
Yeah, definitely apply to jobs even if you're not fully qualified. My previous position, a DevOps intern, we were looking for somebody that knew PowerShell, and all the applicants we got, none of them knew PowerShell. So at this point, we're just looking for somebody that is willing to learn, and so.
And like I said, they'll teach you. I mean, so don't, feel like you have to hit every single point of the job description on your resume. They'll teach you whatever they want to teach you. If they, are interested in you and they find that you're willing to learn, or you're just willing to just be yourself, they'll teach you whatever they want to teach you, and they'll invest the time and money into teaching you whatever they want to teach you. So.
All right.
All right, I guess I can talk for a second. Oh, a special note. You're talking about resume and how to things. Another important thing is networking. That is actually one of the highest parts. If you know somebody that works at a place, you have a way higher chance of getting hired, especially if they take your resume and they directly apply. That is just having a way in of somebody that knows you, just because they basically reference you, is almost close to an immediate in-person interview. And that's important. So never take like networking, like with people, not seriously. That's
How do you guys network?
That's a good question.
network. I mean, somebody, like you can know a lot of people, but for example, like one of my friends, she works at Quicken Loans, and she works in the accounting, but I can use her as a reference to go into IT, just because she works at that company. And it doesn't have to be in the same department. They get compensated for referencing you. Usually it's a monetary compensation.
Did I tell you guys the story about the student that utilized that to his advantage? So I was talking to this guy at a conference last year who accepted a full-time offer at Airbnb, and I was like, how'd you get that? And he said he went on LinkedIn and found the employees at Airbnb that had the position that he wanted, and he emailed them, or messaged them on LinkedIn, whatever, and said, hey, can you refer me? Like, and he would basically sell himself to like them, because these employees get kickbacks. If they refer someone and that person gets hired, they get compensated financially, like $500, $1,000.
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest to refer you if they think that you're good.
Yes.
So this person was just sending out, he wasn't contacting recruiters, he was contacting the employees saying, hey, I want to apply here, can you refer me? Because if you get referred, you're basically guaranteed that your resume is going to be seen by a person instead of an algorithm. So you have an advantage there, and you have the advantage of, oh, hey, this employee vouched for me. They're not going to dig deep into how they really know you. So if you can just send out all these messages to people on LinkedIn and get these referrals, you're really increasing your chances of getting the job from multiple different angles.
It's pretty much cold calling them, which, yeah, it's useful.
Okay. What was the interview process like with your most recent employer? How did you approach it to be successful?
I mean, I'll go first. So, with my recent one with Ally, like I said, it was pretty much the career fair was just small talk with the recruiter, just pretty much, you know, what are you looking for? I'm interested, you know, I'm just, you know, here, just small talk, pretty much just, I let her do most of the talking, telling me what the position was all about, what the company's all about and everything. Then the phone interview was strictly just behavioral, just like flat out, tell me about yourself. You know, what do you like to do on a daily basis? You know, what is, you know, this and that, what are you in school for? This and that, just what do you do in the summertime, you know, like in your free time or whatever. Like it was just strictly just behavioral. Like, can I hold a conversation with this lady? And like not one-worded, you know, answers essentially. Like it was pretty much, she would ask an open-ended question and she was looking to see how you were going to reply to it. You know, if I could go on for like my max, like when I'm usually saying something, I'll give myself like 30 seconds to answer the question with as much as, you know, I can possibly say within 30 seconds. And that's where I'll cut myself off. I'm like, I don't want to ramble on her ear, you know, like for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes about one simple question. I want her to ask as much as she possibly can, and then I'll give myself a cap, you know, so. And like Dr. Z was saying, most of these questions are just generic. Like every recruiter is going to ask you the same behavioral questions. So if you have like a script, that's probably the best way to do it. But then after the first interview, I got invited down to their corporate office in Detroit. Like I said, it was from 8 to 4 a.m. I met with 3 different people while I was there. And then each one was pretty much, it started off behavioral, and then like I said, each one of them had a copy of my resume. So I started off behavioral, and then they would start asking me, you know, just different topics on my resume. Tell me about this, tell me about that, tell me about this, and just seeing how you would respond to it. So if you know, you do go through an interview process and they ask you about something, just be able to talk about it. Just don't give them a one-worded answer, because that's not what they're looking for. While you're giving them an answer, they might be looking, you know, they might be thinking about, oh, I'm going to ask them about this next, or I'm going to ask them about this next. So they know what they're doing as far as like, hey, I'm going to ask him this question and he's going to give me, you know, a 30-second response, but in that 30 seconds, I'm going to think of what the next thing I'm going to ask him is. So, but if you give them a one-worded question, you're going to catch them off guard, and then you have that awkward moment where like they're thinking of like, what am I going to ask him next? You know, that will maybe I can get a, you know, 30-second response out of him rather than a yes or a no. So they're thinking of what to ask you while you're responding to their first question. So give them a little bit of time too. But if you give them like a one-worded answer, they're just kind of like, oh, like, then you're sitting there, you're awkwardly staring at each other while they're thinking of something to ask you next. So, but it was 3 interviews right back to back to back. And then I sent them a thank you email, sent the recruiter a thank you email, letting her know that, I really appreciated them having me and everything, and then that I look forward to hearing from her. Just sweet, simple, like 3-4 lines, and that was literally it in an email, and then just waiting to hear back. So.
I guess I'll go for next. It's well, I've talked about the FCA. The phone interview didn't go so well. But I still got called back, and when the actual interview happened, as I said before, it started the minute I shook that person's hand. And then you go through the things like small talk. For example, I talked to him about apple cider and when was the last time you went to one and which one's your favorite? And then I talked to him what mine is favorite and his favorite. And he was like, yeah, I like going there with my wife and things like that. And they just talk to you like you're a normal human being. And then when you finally get to the conference room, like for me, since it was a business analyst and a programmer job, I asked them, like, can I enter this room? And they were like, yeah, sure, you can enter this room. Like things like that as manners actually show. And then there was another person waiting there, so I was like, okay, maybe there's one person, but there's another person that I'm being surprised by. So you introduce yourself, you do the handshake, and then like they ask you, it's like, so how are you feeling? And I was just flat out honest with them. I was like, I'm nervous as heck. And then like, a person was like, yeah, I can understand that. And then they was like, okay, well, let's just start with this. And then they talked about what they do at the company, and basically what they did was like the infrastructure, and they maintain the applications for that infrastructure. And then I had a question about them that I had to ask up front. I was like, so this is a business analyst and a programmer, or is this just a programmer position? And they were like, well, it's a little bit of both, but we'll be predominantly programming. And so that was something that in the phone interview that was not discussed. Actually, it was counterproductive because they told me it was mostly a business analyst position. So if you have questions like that, make sure you address them ahead of time.
Yes.
Because last thing you want is be accepted for a position that you do not want.
Mm-hmm.
That is important. Then, then the interview started, and they started asking me like behavioral questions, like how did you deal with a, basically stubborn or rude customer? And you just use examples from, I use my examples from my job currently, and that's how, and then I told them, I was like, yes, I had to follow this process, saying and then they were like, did you yell back? I was like, no, there's no point of me yelling back into this because it's just going to add more heat to it. And you talk to them like a professionally and casual way as well. And then the conversation just evolved from there. And they were like, yeah, we like what you're answering. It goes from there.
Yeah. So I already talked about, just try to make the conversation flow. The best things I did was I wrote down like projects I've worked on and like times where I've dealt with like just common questions you got. Because when you get behavioral questions, they'll ask you about a project you worked on when you did this. So I would just look at all my projects really quick, see when I actually ran into that kind of example. But when you do come up with, when you do have an interview, all interviews are different. I've had an interview when I was in front of 5 different people. So that was really intimidating. I've had interviews when one person just comes in and the next person. I've had a GM, their first interview, it's basically a computer. They'll just ask you questions and you just record yourself. It's stressful, but just try to get through it and just try to make the conversation flow.
So I already told you guys a little bit about my phone interview techniques. The in-person interviews is where I started to get really good. So I had a 100% hit rate. If I had an in-person interview, I got an offer. And 2 of the things I did during these in-person interviews, which are really hard when you're going for a professor because they're all-day interviews, like 8-hour interviews, where you're just going to go person to person to person. And the first thing I realized was, unless the person that you're interviewing with is a recruiter, you are interrupting them in their job. So if they're a developer, you're interrupting them. Most likely, they were told by a superior, you're going to have to spend a half hour talking with this candidate. And if they're bringing in multiple candidates, and let's say you're not the very first person they interviewed, they are now at the stage where I've talked to so many people, and I keep getting delayed on my work because I have to talk to this random person that's coming in. So you're automatically, if you have that mindset, what I would try to do when I would sit down in the interview is not come from the perspective of, okay, they're actually prepared for this interview, because they're not. Most likely they haven't looked at your resume at all, or they just brought it up. a minute before you walked in the room, I would think, okay, they don't want to do this. What can I do to make it an enjoyable experience for them? So that's kind of the root of how I would try to like do the friendship thing. Like, let me just like talk to them. You know, if there was any lulls in the conversation, I would want to know a lot about them, because another thing you want to keep in mind is you're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And I know this is really hard for students that are graduating because you're probably very stressed and of the mindset of I'm trying to convince them to hire me. But, and I know I talked to Jason a lot about this, is you need to internalize that you have value and that you're going to get a job when you graduate, because that's really going to change the way that you run the interview. So that is your opportunity, especially when you're there on campus or in person, whatever you want to call it, to ask them questions. What is your day like? Are they stressed? Do they look frustrated? Ask them about that. Hey, what's going on? Are you all right today? And a lot of them will be surprisingly honest with you. So very surprisingly honest about what it's like to work there. Not what their tasks are, but what is it like to be there. And you'll notice they love to talk about that a lot more than the technical details. Tell me about this on their resume. If you get something that they like to talk about, the time just goes by. And they remember that, and you get a really good feel for, would I actually want to work at this place? I have a lot of people tell me up front. One school I interviewed, they just said, one guy just said to my face, you don't want to work here. There's a huge problem. There's a huge disagreement between the older professors who only do research or only do teaching and the younger professors who really like the research. The older professors don't like us. You don't want to come here. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. So just remember that you're interviewing them as well, and that when you're in an in-person interview, most likely the people there don't want to be interviewing you at that moment. They were told to do so by someone else, and keep that in mind.
Yes, I have to agree on that. I did not feel that kind of vibe from them at first, but asking them the more I went through, there was times that at one point they were trying to like get back on the interview because the other person was really having a great time talking to me about things. They were basically, when they took my resume, they were just literally scanning the resume saying, oh, you did this, you did that, you did this. And they just asked me questions. I'm like, what did you do? How did you work? You worked here. What did you do there? What did you interact with? And then you just basically, that's what they asked me through. So I knew from the beginning, they barely scanned my resume. And you have to, as he said before, you have to back up everything you have on your resume. So like you can say, it's like, oh, I have experience in Java. Well, what experience do you really have? Is it just school, or do you actually do side work for yourself for fun? That matters. You have to back up that type of statement saying, I know Java. How do you know Java? What do you know about Java? And it goes from there. And then they might ask you like simple coding questions. When my experience, I wasn't asked coding questions because they were just like, oh, were you willing to learn C#? And I was like, yes, I would like to learn C#. It's very similar to Java. And they were like, okay. And then they go from there. And the one thing where, as Dr. C said, where they were talking about like they don't want to be there because they're busy. The other person was like, he's like, okay, and he was like trying to interrupt the conversation when I was having a conversation with the other person, was like trying to get this on track. And sometimes the allowed time was an hour. I went over it by 15 minutes because it was just so much like influential talking between the other person and the other.
All right. This question, do you have any advice in regards to negotiating pay? This is pretty important.
Talk to Dr. Z about it.
Yeah, talk to Dr. Z.
No, so I'll start, but I just recently I accepted this offer with Ally, but my biggest thing was, and asked Dr. Z about this, I literally, I blew this guy up one day in Slack and just kind of like had like a meltdown, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to accept the offer and blah, blah, and then
tell them why you were going to do that. Tell them what was going on.
So my biggest thing was, I was like, oh, I got an offer on the table. I finally got an offer from somewhere that I liked the offer, but it was a generous offer, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to accept it. I'm not going to be greedy, blah blah. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to accept it and call it a day. With talking to Dr. Z, I was like talking to other students in the class and everything, and like they're like, I was like, you know what, I for whatever reason, I was like, I saw Dr. Z literally walk by the classroom. I was like, I should ask him. I just see what he thinks. He totally, in the hour and a half I think we spent between the hallway and the office that day, he totally changed my mind about just accepting the offer. And I had gotten the offer, and I had kind of a ridiculous amount of time to respond to the offer, but what I did was I waited a couple days and I had emailed the recruiter back. Now that I physically had in email like a non-official offer, but it was an offer. They had had a base salary and this and that and whatnot. I kind of knew where I wanted to be as far as what like this base salary would be. So what I did was I simply thanked her for the offer, thanked her for the opportunity again to be able to interview with the company, and then I simply kind of made myself, I put myself out there. I was like, with my experience and my background, is there any room for negotiation? So I simply just asked. I didn't like counter right away and be like, hey, I want this much, like yes or no. I simply just asked if there was room for negotiation just to see what she would say, because if she said no, then I knew right then and there, like, okay, cool, there's no room for negotiation, this is what they're gonna stay at, boom. She literally in an email said, had Jason, yes, what did you have in mind when I asked if there was room for negotiation? So that's when I was like, okay, I can counter now. But like, with talking to Dr. Z, he told me, he's like, you know what you want, so go a little bit above what you want and what you think you're valued at, just to see what they're gonna say. He's like, if the worst case scenario, they say no and they come back and counter you with something else. So what I did just that. I countered with a little bit more than what I wanted, just in hopes that they would come back and counter with exactly what I wanted. So, and that's exactly how it played out. I countered with what I thought, was maybe a little bit more, maybe like maybe if I was with this company for 2 years, that's what I'd be making. So I countered with that. They came back and gave me exactly what I had originally wanted in my head. And then that's when I was, I had the offer on the table, waited a couple more days and accepted the offer. So simply just asking, is there room for negotiation? Don't hit them right back with, hey, I want this much. They offer you 65, you come back and hit them with 80. Like, do not do that. Just simply, be like, hey, is there any room for negotiation at all? Just flat out, they'll tell you yes or no, there is. She literally, in 4 words, yes, what do you have in mind? Literally, so like right then and there, I'm like, wow, okay, now I know there is room for negotiation. And I was like, this, with my background and my experience, this is what I believe this is what I was kind of looking for. Let me know what your thoughts are and look forward to hearing from you. Like just as that, she countered me literally 2 days later with, we can't go that high, but this is what we can do. Let me know what you think. And that's when I was like, perfect. So, and that's when I accepted the offer. So don't hit them right away with, you have an offer on the table, and then hit them right back with what you want, or like what you think you can get out of them. Just simply ask if there's room for negotiation, yes or no. That way it opens up a little bit more conversation between you guys, and it's not awkward like, oh, hey, he came back at way more than he was offered, blah, blah. He wasn't, just simply ask. That's the biggest thing. That's what I did. So
You're expected to bargain.
yeah.
Do not take everything at face value. You're expected to bargain, because what they want is they want to save the lowest dime. Basically, they're trying to lowball you, and then you tell them like, oh, I want. Is there more? Do you want? And then they're like, oh, okay, and then they go from there. But never take the base offer. And also, when you're negotiating, everything is on the table. It can be pay, vacation, sick days, etc.
Benefits, it could be benefits as well. Yeah,
it's everything's on the table. Like, do not accept, oh, this is just the money and you get standard benefits. No. If there's 3-week vacation, say I want 4-week vacation. Why? Because I want to travel. What are you gonna tell me? Like,
Right.
They'll accept 1 more week of paid vacation for you to work there. So that's my
Well,
yeah.
me, I accepted my first offer they gave me. In my defense, they offered me a full-time salary while I worked part-time until I finished school. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. Just give me something to sign. So I literally said yes as they offered me that position. So I guess don't do what I did.
But why? So are you gonna stay at that job?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason why was it bad that you did that? Thinking long term.
Well, what he said, it would probably have been a good idea to ask for if there is room to negotiate. But I guess my mindset was I would think that at the end of when I actually start working, they would maybe promote me. But I don't know.
Yeah.
So the other thing is like, and I'm not saying anything bad about you, but like with that, like, with being a part-time and getting a full-time salary, that's pretty, that's awesome. But
It is generous.
yeah, that's very, very generous. That kudos to you. That's awesome. But if you are working actual full-time and you have an offer, like you're applying for a position that's full-time, and this is what made me really think when I talked to Dr. Z about this. If they have given you an offer, like you were saying, they expect you to counter, but if you accept that offer right off the bat, like within like, right then and there, whatever it is, that might make you look like, oh, this kid was desperate or he needed a job really bad and he hasn't gotten any other offers and whatnot. I mean, I'm not saying that to you at all. I just want to make that clear. But just in general, like if you're looking, they might be like, oh wow, like he accepted it so fast, like we overpaid for this kid, So it's definitely not a bad thing to wait. It's not a bad thing just to even ask to see if they, if there is room for negotiation. I know it's like eager, you want to accept the offer like right away and everything. Trust me, I was there, asked Dr. Z, but if you are entertaining other offers as well, let them know that. Be like, hey, I am entertaining other offers. Is there room for negotiation with this offer? Don't hesitate to tell them that at all. Like you were saying, they do expect you to counter them. They 100% expect you to counter them. They know what their cap is on what they can offer you, and if you counter them, they'll straight up tell you yes or no. They'll just be honest with you. So.
They will also tell you they will not divulge how much they can go up. So your counter offer kind of states like, oh, are you willing to do this? And if it hits their margin, they'll most likely accept it.
Yep.
So, Wojciech, I'm really sorry to hear that. And the reason that it's the reason I'm really sorry to hear that is because probably the first job you get when you graduate, the first full-time job you get, is the most important one you want to negotiate for. Because every job or promotion you get after that, the salary is going to be based relative to what you were already making. So if you get a 2%, 4% bonus or increase, whatever, the next year, that's based on what you originally decided on. If you go for another job, they're probably going to ask, or there's going to be ways for them to figure out what your salary is now, and they're going to base their offer relative to that. So you want to get as high of an initial salary as possible, because for the rest of your life, your promotions, the jobs you go to, you're going to be paid relative to that very first offer, okay? Something that Jason said is very important, because I think the reason students don't negotiate is because they have this mindset that, for one, is this insane fear that if I attempt to negotiate, they're going to rescind the offer. How dare you ask for something else? I'm taking it off the table, and I'll tell you that does not happen. That does not happen. That is impossible. That will never, ever happen, okay? So one, understand that. But two, like Jason was saying, they want to give you more. Because if you take that offer immediately, they're gonna, like you just said, they're gonna go, well, did we make a mistake? Did we not see something that other companies saw? But if you're in this battle of negotiation and you finally say yes, they go, yeah, we got a good one. Yes, we got a good one. We earned that one. We took that one away from other companies.
They're bargaining for you.
Yeah.
Do it. They want you to do it. They want you to negotiate. So do it. Yes.
Is it too much say their offer is a couple thousand lower than what you originally wanted? Is it too much to say to want higher pay and maybe like a little vacation? Is that like
Nothing's too much.
Nothing's too much.
Or should we?
Nothing's too much if you can explain why you deserve it.
Yeah.
That was the advice that was given to me. So when I was negotiating, because the hardest time to negotiate is when you only have one offer. And how do you negotiate when you can't just say, oh, I got a higher offer from this company, right? The way to do it is you have to rationalize it in some way. So like when I got my first offer for a professor position, before getting any other schools, I wanted to negotiate. And so what I did is I looked up statistics. What are the national statistics? What's the averages for my position across the U.S.? What's the average for the state of Michigan? And if there was anything in the offer that I could make an argument for, not just say, I want this. If you can explain why, nothing's too much if you can explain why. And the worst thing they're going to say is, no, we can't do that.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, the worst thing you can say is no. Like, it's
But-
the same concept.
But let me tell you, the worst thing that can, this is why I've heard students actually telling other students, don't bother negotiating, or with a particular company, oh, they're not going to budge on salary, don't bother. I suspect the reason that some of your classmates are saying that is because they didn't bother to negotiate. And if they find out you got a higher offer than I did, they're going to feel like crap.
Right.
They're going to feel like crap. So
Yeah.
if you're hesitant about negotiating, just think about this. So like Jason was saying, it's going to feel so great to accept that offer, and just to have it done with. My life is ready to go. But 6 months down the road, a year down the road, maybe they hire a new person, and you overhear just randomly, oh yeah, the good opening offer, I took 75,000, and they go, 75? I took 67. What? It's going to crush you to know that you left something on the table. So my strategy was always to ask for more and more and more with rationale until I got the no. Every single school that I was going to offer some, I would keep going until I got a no. And then I could rest easy at night knowing that's the best I could get there. That's the absolute best I could get there. Now, something Jason said that this is the most fun part for me is telling other companies. So some students also have this fear that I'm not allowed to tell other companies about this. You better do that. So the first thing I did, first thing I did when I got an offer was I considered how I was going to plan my counter offer. The second thing I did was tell every other school that I was interviewing with, I got an offer, and if there was good parts of that offer, whether it was salary, research lab space, PhD student funding, I would tell them. I would tell my offer to the other schools. And this is places where I had already had the in-person interview and I was waiting for them to make a decision. It was places that maybe I just did a phone interview with. If I did any kind of personal contact with them, email, phone, in person, I let them know. Hey, I got an offer. And that place, their deadline is this time. What that does is make them go, oh my God, this person's one, of value, and two, we better speed it up. So I had one school that just hastily went, okay, what did they offer? And they countered with everything except for one thing that was very important to me. And I said, thank you, that's the maximum that you can do. Because they knew they weren't the best offer I had. And they go, yeah, it really is. We really can't do anything else. So then within like a span of a week, I had 3 offers just by telling other places I had one. As soon as you get one, boom, 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 you sped up the whole process for every company you're talking to. And that's the easiest way to counter, is to say, not just I want this higher money, but this other company is going to pay me that. And then they'll either match it or they'll go above because they know you're of value. So once you get one offer, that's not when you're done. That's when you just get started. That's when you just get started because now the ball's in your court. You can't lose now. The worst you can do is accept that offer, the original offer you have. Now you can just go and do whatever you want and try to counter with every other company. Yes?
So, say you get one offer for $70,000. Then you get another one for $72,000, but you really want like $75,000 or $80,000.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to tell them, hey, I got an offer for $72,000 if you really want $80,000. What do you
Yeah.
do there?
What would you do?
I don't know.
So
Can I speak on this?
Yeah.
Is that cool? So I was gonna say what I would do, like in a situation like that, if I knew that I wanted, let's say I had 2 offers on the table, one for 70, one for 72, but I actually wanted 75, 80. I would go back to both companies and say like, hey, I've got another offer on the table. I wouldn't tell the 70 company that, hey, this is how much I got from the other one, but I would ask them first, is there room for negotiation, just to see what they would say. And that's where I would counter them at I would counter them at 80. If you want 75, counter them at 80, just to see what they're gonna say. If they say, yes, there is room for negotiation, counter them at 80 and see what they say. And then if you do get an offer for 75 or even 80, then go back to the 72 company and say, hey, look, I have an offer on the table for this much. What can you guys do? Because if they're already at 72 and you tell them, hey, this is what I have on the table, they're either going to match it or, like Dr. Z said, they're going to offer you more than what it is. So you might end up with, more than what you were originally anticipating. So yeah, definitely. But I would always start with the lower one first, just to see what they would offer you. Just ask if there's room for negotiation. If there is, shoot your shot with them, just see what they would, what they'll offer you again. Like I said, you'll counter them. They'll probably either counter you back or, say, yes, we can do that. And then go back to your second company and say, hey, this is what I have on the table. Is there a room for negotiation there, yes or no? So,
Yeah, disclose information in the way that is most advantageous to you. So if you got a 70 and a 72 and you want 75, it's not going to be in your best interest to tell a company, oh, I got 72, can you give me 75? You say, hey, I got an offer from another place. Like Jason said, would you consider negotiating? If they say yes, I think my value is commensurate with 75K.
Yeah, don't tell companies like specifically like, hey, this is what I got from this place. Don't tell them that. Like, just let them know. Be like, especially just let them know, hey, I'm entertaining other offers from different companies. Is there a room for negotiation? Yes or no? If they say yes, counter them with whatever you're comfortable with countering, and then go from there. Don't ever tell them like, hey, the 70 company, be like, hey, I got an offer for 72. What can you guys do? Don't ever tell them that. Just be like, hey, I'm entertaining other offers. Don't tell them. I wouldn't, but don't tell them like what company it is or what the salary they offered you was. Just simply tell them you're entertaining other offers. They'll get it. They understand. They're recruiters. They've done this multiple times. So, and they just go from there. So.
Will there ever be a situation where they ask you what is
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had that.
Yeah.
So
Answer how you want, especially if it's over email. You're okay because you can think this out, right? You can choose to disclose as you want. You know, I wouldn't outright lie.
would you say I'm not really comfortable telling you, or would you try to get around it, or say, hey, I feel like I'm worth this much instead of telling them the actual no? Or
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So like, and like a lot of places too, like with Google and Apple specifically, like I have signed an NDA where I cannot disclose my salary. Like, you know, I'm just strictly not allowed. And if they ever found out, like, you know, I'd be in trouble with them, like, you know, legal trouble with them. So if you have, like some companies, like Ally didn't make me do it, but Google and Apple both had made me sign an NDA saying that I cannot disclose what I was doing there or how much I was making while I was there and anything like that, you know, what compensation I was getting or whatnot. So if, you know, some companies before, like during the interview process, they will make you sign an NDA saying, hey, if we ever find out you're talking about this to anybody else, you know, we'll pursue you with legal action. Like, you know, and if that is the case, like, don't hesitate to tell that recruiter if they ask you what, you know, you're getting from other companies. Don't hesitate to say, hey, I have signed an NDA, so I cannot disclose that information. So don't.
You're not going to get that very much because
Yeah.
you got to think from the recruiter's perspective. If you got an offer for 72,000 and you're arguing for 75, and they say, well, what did that company offer you? That makes them look really bad, actually, because it gives the impression we don't want to offer any more than what the competition did. They want to look good.
Yeah.
So if you say, I got a higher offer, are you willing to negotiate? No, I think 75 is more commensurate with my value. They're not going to ask that. They're never going to ask you what did the other company offer. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. One other thing for negotiations, because this happens in the professor world a lot. Whatever you negotiate for, especially if it's something like other than salary, make sure it is in writing. Because the way it usually goes, you'll get emailed an offer, but then like once the reason they email you first is because they expect negotiation. Then once you've settled on the details, what you think was settled, when you get an offer to sign, you know, pen and paper, make sure everything that you negotiated is on there. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt, especially if it's like, for me, it's like a research lab space or student funding, something that I might not even utilize for a year or so. If it's not in writing, nothing requires them to give that to you. Nothing. So make sure whatever you negotiate is actually in that final contract that you sign.
Also, this is kind of counter thing, but know your worth. Like,
Don't settle.
Yeah, don't settle.
Don't settle.
Like, what was it? Like Little Caesars tried to, like, I told them like what I wanted, and they were like, "That's way out of our budget range." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna work here." And the phone interview ended right then and there. There was no. I pretty much like cold turkey, and I was like, "I would want to work for you guys, but if you're gonna be offering me this little for how much I've already done, no." So make sure you know your worth, and if they try to lowball you, just walk away. There's no point for you to settle, because then later on, as Dr. Z said, it will just follow you.
But guys, at the same time, don't just take an offer just because of how much the money is either. Like, you know, that's like the one big thing is like, oh, well, this company offered me this much, and you know, yeah, the job's hard, but you know, this other company offered me, you know, 10 grand less, so I think I'm gonna take the one that offered me 10 grand more. Don't take it just because it's the money. You know, make sure that in the long run, like, you're gonna be happy at this place. You know, at the end of the day, you're the most important person in your life. Don't, you know, they'll replace you in a heartbeat if they have to. So don't take a job just because of the money and whatever, and you know, make sure at the end of the day, like, you're actually going to enjoy the job and it's going to be something that you like are going to be happy with. Don't just do it because they offered you, you know, way more than another company did. With just me, I had a return offer from Google for a second internship. So I was originally out there summer 2016. I hated California, to be honest with you guys. I hated California. I did not like it. Silicon Valley was just not for me. It was way too overcrowded, way too many people. They offered me, I was there for 14 weeks. When I got back home, 2 weeks later, my recruiter called me and said, hey, we were very impressed with what you guys did this summer. We want to invite your whole team back for next summer. You have 10 days to respond to the offer, yes or no. I tried so hard to get placed into a different city. So I did not want to go back to California at all by any means. I did what I wanted to do out there, and I didn't want to go back. I just knew that I did not want to go back. And I tried so hard to get a different city, just a different office, you know, work still within Google, but just at a different location. But at the end of the day, because I was going back as an intern, I had to go back to California to their headquarters. I knew like how miserable I was with just like, don't get me wrong, working for Google was amazing, but just the living situation that I was in and just the amount of traffic and the amount of people out there, and it was just not for me at all. I knew at the end of the day, if I went back, that I would first of all be wasting my time and then their time as well, because I knew that I would never pursue a job that was in California, whether it was Google or anybody else. So I respectfully declined the offer once I found out that I couldn't be relocated, the second summer. So I specifically said, no, if there is no consideration for relocation, then unfortunately I am going to have to respectfully decline the offer. So, and that was just me. Like, all my friends are like, oh, you're crazy, you said no to Google. But at the end of the day, like, I knew I wasn't going to be happy if I went back out there, and I knew I was never going to ever move out there, in my future, unless, it was just something crazy or something like that. But for me being, I think I was 21, 21 at the time, I was like, there's just no way I'd ever live out here, especially once I graduated. Like, it's not doable for me, and I'm not going to waste anybody's time, especially my own, to entertain another internship. So, but yeah, don't do something just because of what they offered you. I mean, it's just, you'll regret it. You'll regret it, 100%. So.
Yep, I agree. The offer I got, this was not the highest paying school that I got an offer from, but everything else about it, I really felt like I would enjoy my life here better, and then I ended up taking the position. Yeah.
What made you take it?
There's a lot of things. One, I like the freedom they were giving me. They were just, you can make your own classes. You guys know I made the game design course, and they're giving me capstone now. Like, I could do what I want here with very little oversight, giving me a research lab, and they made me an offer very, very quickly, 4 days after I interviewed. And I thought that spoke a lot, that they wanted me, that they were willing to do what they can to make sure I enjoyed my job here and that I would want to stay here. And I made the right decision. You're going to get a good feel for a place when you interview there. Like, what's the vibe like here? And I would trust that more than a lot of the hard numbers that you get in offers.
And in the interviews, that vibes does carry. If someone's being rude to you and everything, that person will be rude to you when you're on the job. So make sure you pick up on those things as well.
All right. Now is the time when we open the floor to any questions you may have. Go ahead, Braylon, I think you got one?
Yeah, so how would you guys handle a offer that is done over the phone? So I guess not face to face, but you're talking directly to the person. If you wanted to sit on it, I suppose.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever had an offer that I didn't get in writing. Like, so like with my ally offer, she had called me and gave me verbally, like a verbal offer over the phone. At the end of the conversation, she specifically told me, I will be forwarding you this, all this in an email. That way you have it on your end and everything. So if for whatever reason, and there's no, like, I would definitely do it. If for whatever reason they don't tell you that you're going to get this in an email, I would simply just ask if you can have it in writing. I mean, I don't know what company would, offer you something and not give it to you in writing.
Were they expecting a decision on the phone right then?
Yeah,
That just sounds unprofessional.
yeah, I was gonna say that doesn't
sounds
sound.
extremely
Yeah.
unprofessional.
So elaborate. I got the phone.
Yeah.
I believe he sent me the email shortly after the offer, but after the initial phone call, he called me back saying what the pay was, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's fine. So I kind of folded because I thought the conversation was over, but we never mentioned pay.
Yeah.
And then he did, and I was like, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, like when I worked for Blue Collar, sometimes I got offers like that, and it was just like, well, can you do this much? And they were like, no. I'm like, why not? And I just got to talk to them about it. But this is more for salary, and salary is usually by email.
Yeah, I would just say, if you're gonna have time. That's what I did. And then they told me the whole thing about my job, and I was like, okay, yeah, but I would just say, can I have some time to think about it or something like that?
I think you might have misinterpreted. I don't know if they were necessarily expecting an answer right away.
Yeah, I may have misinterpreted it.
And imagine that because I really think you're all capable of doing this. Imagine you're in high demand and you're going to get multiple offers. Just operate from that headspace. You can't give yes right away, right? If you're interviewing, if you have interviews set up in multiple places, your mind's not going to immediately go to, oh my God, should I take this? It's going to go to, I can't because I still have these other opportunities available to me. So you say, thank you. Get all the details you need. Be like, okay, when do I need to make a decision by, or something like that. But it's very strange to get an offer over the phone. Usually they'll email you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
What's a good or bad question to ask when an interviewer asks you, so do you have any questions?
Oh, this is you guys go ahead.
I usually like to ask just if if I were to get an offer and accept the position, what would my day-to-day like routine look like? Like, what would it be? And just let them speak. Then with whatever they might say, try to like just think of another question just based on what they would say. Like, if they say something, she'd be like, well, where would that be at, or where, what would I do specifically with this? Like me, like when I asked Ally, like, what would my day-to-day operation look like? They specifically said, like, you will be working with multiple different teams within Ally, and you'd be working with not only this team and that team. So I specifically said, like, well, what would an IT person be doing with the advertising team, or like, the just the whatever, analytics team? Like, what would an IT person be doing with those specific teams in there? So, or like the finance team, like, what would I do specifically? And just let them go on and be able to tell you. So. That's what I usually like to do. Just I'll ask them like, hey, what are my day-to-day operations, and then try to base a question off what their answer was. So
A lot of, at least from my experience, a lot of the questions I interpret while the interview is going. Like, I have a set of questions, and when they ask like questions, and after I answer it, a lot of times I counter back with a question of my own, saying why this or why that, and at the end, if there's a question that's unanswered, that's what I would ask. But I've asked questions like, what can this company do for me to make me more marketable in later future? And then you just let them go. And they can say, if they don't have an answer to that, that speaks volume, because then they're like caught off guard by it. And a lot of times I found that question caught a lot of people off guard. And then you just make up this weird answer, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And then then they have to like explain more and more.
Yeah, if you get asked a technical question, I try to ask like a follow-up question to them, and if you ask like a question after they ask the question, they'll be impressed because they know that you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's how I went with it.
So you're asking like at the end of an interview, and it's like the part where like, do you have any questions for us? So I had a series of like questions that I definitely wanted answered because I knew what mattered to me. For taking a position. Like, there were certain things like the ability to make courses, research labs. So a lot of it was like, it's going to be based on what do you value, and if there's something that's going to be important to you in a job and they didn't touch on, those are obvious ones. But then depending on the context, if it was like, especially at this school, we have like a lot of like kind of younger professors. So if they recently took an offer, one of my go-tos was, why did you accept an offer here? Was a big one. Another one I had is like, if it was someone in a similar position to me, or is teaching similar stuff or researching similar stuff, what does your typical day look like? Another one was, is there anything that you wish you knew before taking the job here that maybe I should know about? Those are kind of the things that I was usually asking.
So besides the good pay, what are the benefits that people don't really think about?
Oh, you got to pick it up.
Yeah, I can't get anything here.
Besides the good pay, what are the benefits that people don't really think
Oh, that's an awesome question. So what things other than pay should we be negotiating?
Vacation, paid time off, do you get bonuses?
So to be completely honest with you guys and transparent, I just turned 26 last week. I've been at OU for 4.5 years now, and I was at Macomb for 2 years before that. So my entire bachelor's it took me 6.5 years, but I have no student loan debt because I got tuition reimbursement through Apple. So they have pretty much paid my entire tuition to be here. So that was like one of the biggest benefits that I got out of Apple. But I would think, so yeah, it took me a little bit longer to get through school than your traditional 4-year degree, but I'm walking out of here December 14th with absolutely no debt to my name. So that was one huge thing that I really looked for with Ally too. I do plan on pursuing a master's degree one day, so that was like one of my questions is like, is there tuition reimbursement or any kind of educational assistance at all? So like that was a huge one for me. I wanted to know if they did offer that or not. I would say another one would be like stock share, 401k, health benefits as well. Anything that you can essentially get out of them, 100%, yeah. But my biggest one was tuition reimbursement, so that was just huge for me, especially with what I want to do in my career and like my educational career as well. So.
The one thing I would say to piggyback that is be careful when they talk about tuition, because there can be a lot of restrictions on it.
Yes. Yeah.
They can say, oh, you can't take this class because it doesn't pertain to this. Make sure you have this in writing saying, if I choose to do something similar or something completely different, you will still acknowledge it. And it's always important to make sure it's all in writing, because the worst thing they can say is in the contract that there's nothing which you negotiate is there. because that's what's just.
The other thing, guys, like if a company does offer like 401k or like employee stock purchase plans or anything like that, invest as much as you possibly can into it. Yeah, I mean, when I first started working for Apple, I was 22, 21 or something like that, and I invested in everything that they possibly offered to me, and I'm walking out of there with a 401k that's, you know, that of like I you know, for being 26 years old, like, you know, I have a very good amount of money in a 401k. I have a very good amount in stock, you know, that
How many of you know what a 401k is? Okay, I did not know when I graduated. I feel like a lot of people don't fully understand what that means or how you utilize that money or things like that. Maybe we should have a seminar just about financial well-being or something like that.
So like try to do, I know it sucks because don't get me wrong, like I invested as much as I possibly could into Apple's employee stock purchase plan and their 401k matching, you know, contribution. Yeah, it does suck when you get your paycheck and it's X amount of dollars less than it should have been because you're putting so much money into these accounts. But when you walk away from those companies, or you know, when you do retire one day, you will have a good amount saved up. I cannot stress enough how much, like, I'm so glad that I invested into stock purchase plans and 401k with them. Like for me, and like, so give you guys a little bit of a, I guess, example. My last day at Apple is this coming Friday. I don't start my new job until January 13th, but I'm taking a month and a half off, and I'm able to do that because of what I did as far as, you know, 401k and my stock purchase plan. So, but without that, like, there's no way I could have taken a month.
You can't access your 401k stuff.
Correct. Yes, you can. I mean, technically you can, but you'll get penalized very heavily for it.
We're rapidly going into like finance talk.
Sorry.
401k is a retirement plan where you can't touch the money until you're 59 and a half.
What's that?
401k, it's 59 and a half. I mean, there's like an exact, like, it's 59 and a half. But a benefit of a 401k in most companies is they match your contribution. So like whatever your salary is, they'll match you up to, like, if you invest 10% of your salary, they'll match that. So that's free money, right? That was one of the things I loved about this school is like.
Yeah,
6%?
see, that's,
So like, when you hear something crazy, Oakland University for professors, there's not even matching. They just take an amount of money equivalent of 14% of my salary and put it into, it's called a 403B, which is basically an academic 401k. So I don't even have to match it. They just take 14% of whatever my salary is, like additional money, and throw it in that account. That was another reason I forgot to mention why.
That's unheard of.
I was gonna say that's
it's unheard of what Oakland.
So back to the original question though. So 401k is a huge thing. Whatever their investment or retirement options are, they usually have. Actually, an HR person would probably be excited to give that stuff to you. Like they would love to talk to you about that stuff. Health insurance, dental is usually separate. So talk about that. Eyes, another one. Time off is one. Also get a good gauge on the promotion structure. When do you go up for promotion? Is it like a yearly review thing? Is it just whenever they feel like increasing your pay? Get a good feel for that. Also get a good feel on what are there particular performance metrics that they expect you to hit. Not necessarily if they're built into your salary, but are they evaluating you based on certain things that you need to know about? Is another thing you want to touch on. What else? What else are we think?
I really like. I asked about hours I have to work, so what time I come in, and I also talked about working from home. So
working from home. Always ask that.
That's an awesome one. When you accept an offer, do they pay travel expenses? This school paid me way too much just to move. And maybe if you're going to stay in Michigan, it's not as much of an issue, but a lot of companies will pay you that, or a bonus as well. I know you got a bonus. You can talk about that as well.
So a lot of people in the ITCS field say that experience trumps the degree / whatever you're getting. What would you say would be I suppose, decent or good amount of experience to have before leaving college? And to pivot off that, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase the second part. I can't figure it out.
All right, so experience. You guys want to talk about that?
It's I would say it's not really experience, is what you know.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Oh, I remember what my tip was. If you were offered, while still in school, a full-time position
different questions. Let's do the experience one
different
first, please.
It's about what you know and if you can prove it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
That's like,
back up what she said.
yes.
So I had a buddy that moved to America from the Dominican Republic, and he was so poor he had to live in the YMCA with homeless people for a portion of his undergraduate degree. He was a CS major, and after he finished his class assignments, and it was really hard for him to get a job because of immigration stuff and all these other reasons where like it didn't make sense for him to immediately try to find a part-time job. So he would just learn stuff that interested him about programming and do his own projects that would embody those skills. So he had a portfolio of things on his website, GitHub repository of things that he did on his own, which looks maybe even more impressive than just having an internship, because it's like, I took the initiative here to do this, to learn this, to teach myself this thing that I know is going to be of value to me when I graduate. And he got this actually goes to your next question. He was getting full-time offers before he even graduated with no internship experience, because he was just was able to demonstrate the skill set that he was amassing.
Yeah, kind of like what I said, like whatever you put on your resume, I don't really think experience is that important, but if you can just back anything up that you have on your resume and be able to talk about it, that says it all right there. So I wouldn't be too worried about experience as much. Just be able to talk. Be able to talk and back it up, and especially with what you're passionate about, you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but this goes a lot into resume writing, I think, because a lot of students have this notion that work experience, and I can only put things in there that I did for a company, and then there's like classes or education or something, which is this like second-rate thing. Oh, I didn't do it for a company, so it doesn't count, right? Identify what you know, like they're saying, but know how to put it on a resume, so it's not just like this empty thing because you have no companies that you work for. What was your other question?
The other question was slightly answered. It was, if you are still in school and you were offered a full-time position, would you take it, knowing that you would
What was your thinking, Wojciech? Why'd you do that?
I accepted it, and I was also going for other interviews, because if they offered me something else, I would just go back to the original company. I like working there, so I went to other interviews, and if they offered me something more or something better, I would probably go back to them and tell them, hey, I got an offer for more. If you guys don't pay me more, then I'll leave.
Are you saying like you get offered while you're in school, you get offered a full-time position, and they want you to stop going to school to like
They stop going to school, but it's say you're a daytime student and they want you to take my classes online, which would probably limit the amount of classes you take.
I was gonna say I would stress how important your education is to you, and see if they will work with you on that. So I would stress heavily.
This happened to you? Oh, okay, because this happened to a buddy of mine. He ended up doing what I don't think you guys are thinking, which he took it. He outright left school voluntarily to take a job at a company.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't ever do that.
I think he made the absolute right choice.
Really?
Yes. And this is how I'm going to explain what the job was. And the reason I say it was for a startup company that was already at a phase to where they had demonstrated some success. It wasn't a gamble, and they wanted him. He was basically going to be in line to be CTO. It was a tech-based company, and he was an intern that they wanted to hire full-time to basically run the app. It was in the music industry, and it was an app to help independent artists submit their music videos for consideration for TV. And they were a very successful company, but didn't have much in terms of tech talent for the company. And he decided, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I can always go back, but the upside here seems to outweigh the risk. And he took it, and he hasn't looked back, and he's extremely successful now. So I think there's a lot of dynamics to this scenario you're bringing up that need to be considered. If it's just a remedial, like, I'm not really excited about this job, then don't take it, right? But if it's like, wow, this is not just a job, this could be the way I impact the world, then you want to put some consideration into it.
It sounds like a dream career. No, like that's. I guess he pretty much said it out of the ballpark. If it looks like a low risk and high reward, take it. But if it's something that you're not sure about, most likely try to negotiate around it.
It seems like the reason you guys are saying no to that is because of this just assumption that kind of job is not more valuable than the degree would be. Like this kid that I'm talking about, he doesn't even need to go back to school for the degree, because that experience of being in that authority role for this company is going to trump any kind of degree that you can put on there. So I would really weigh even if I'm going to leave that company that is offering you to leave school or switch to night classes, would that experience outweigh or be more valuable than the degree that I would be giving up or delaying? And that should dictate the decision.
I mean, the reason why I was kind of saying no is because if, let's say, I'm with the company and it turns out that for some reason I get let go from the company, now I've been at that company, but now I have to go back to school again. And if it's years down the road, I'm out of the habit of school and I don't have a degree and I'm probably living on my own and there's a lot of expenses that you have to go for. So it's kind of a risky situation. That's why.
All right. Do we have any other questions? No? All right. So I suppose if you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to impart before we end.
Yeah, join the club.
Recruit.
This is the ACM SIGCHI student chapter. I'm the faculty advisor. The lab we have on the 5th floor, EC 557 is open to all you guys whenever you want to use it. And we really would love to hear your thoughts on other kinds of events you would want. If this finance thing, 401ks, is that something you want to learn more about, let us know. What this club really is really just a friend group, your guys' friend group that we decided to just label as a club. And the benefit of that is when the school recognizes you as a club, they pay for food, they let you book public spaces around campus for things. ACM has provided us funding to fly out people if we want. There's a lot of benefits of just calling your friend group a club. And we always envision this as something that could give to students what they wanted, because I think a lot of the college experience is stuff that you don't really get value out of, and we want to give you the things you want, tips for getting jobs or whatever else you think would be of value to you. So let any of us know. I know Ryan put up a lot of things with QR codes for our Discord. We're strange in the way that we don't do weekly meetings, at least not anymore. We have the lab space, but I know for some of you, if it were me, I'd be very shy to just go up there if I don't know that social group. Discord is a good low effort way to get involved and just see what people are talking about, and then if you want to stop by the lab, you're more than happy to. That's my closing line.
Guys, at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you're the most important person in your lives. So, whatever decision you decide to make, just make sure it's going to benefit you before anybody else. But that's something that one of my managers really, really stressed to me at Apple. And just don't forget, at the end of the day, it's you. So whatever you guys do decide to do in your careers, whether it's educational or professional careers, just make sure you're always looking out for yourselves. That's what I would say as a closing note. So.
The one thing that the school does for you here is it makes you versatile. You're introduced to a lot of technologies, and actually a lot of companies like that. You are clay, so they would like to mold you. So do not be afraid of learning new technologies if they want you to, and learn on your own. And it's just because you're here doesn't mean you cannot learn more things. You can always learn a different language because you want to. That's just something you have to take as a student, as a graduate, is you're always going to learn in this profession.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Just learn on your own. I have a server at home that I like to play with. I got my certification in AWS. I just like to learn that kind of stuff, which helps in my field, so yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for this panel. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.